Chapter 73. Serpent's Fangs and Harsh Reality. Voldemort happened to check in during an evening when Harry was teaching that Harry caught it almost immediately, but was busy dodging a hex, and that took some concentration. In fact, he found to his frustration, teaching and practicing were both durable for his occlumency. It felt spotty, like he was tuning a radio, and it kept going through static and through music. "I'm glad to see you are not being complacent," Voldemort commented, and then it stopped being so hard to keep his mind in one place and clear. Voldemort wasn't there anymore, an indescribable, formless feeling behind his eyes. Harry thought about it as he went around and checked everyone's work on their spells. It was probably about respect again. Voldemort seemed to care about that. Harry lying down and dying wouldn't be as fun for him as Harry practicing a lot, fighting fairly, and thinking. "Are you feeling okay, Harry?" Hermione asked. "Sure, same as usual." Harry tried a smile out on her, but her return smile was rather tired. "How's elf unionization keeping you up?" "And other things," she allowed. "I want to be ready for whatever happens next." Harry nodded. "Whenever I start worrying," he told her, watching the crowded class cast colorful spells at each other, "I just remember that green potion braided Hagrid's beard before he went where good potions go. That's a good memory." "You really shouldn't have done that to the teachers," Hermione said, apparently trying to be pious. Harry didn't buy it for a minute. "No real harm done, though, and they didn't think it was me." At which point, someone hailed Harry, and he had to go be teacher again. "What do you think our chances are at Christmas break?" "Not looking good, not your fault. Things here fine. Hedwig hurt her wing on the way back. Let her stay there until she feels better. One important thing, destroy it as soon as possible. Can't write why. Merry Christmas." At the last meeting, Cho kissed him under the mistletoe. Harry wandered back to his dorm very slowly, in a daze. "Teenagers, you do realize this is rather distracting. So's you trying to take over the world. At least mine's fun. I will settle for the United Kingdom. I am not unreasonable. I've never kissed anyone before." His head was silent for a little while. That was nice. "You should inform Severus." Voldemort's attention turned elsewhere, and Harry went back to worrying about Cho. She'd been crying. That had been odd. Ron was quite interested, but only if his sister were not to be upset. But also he'd heard she was dating Michael Corner now, and that really wasn't okay. Harry should consider his options. That was all Ron was saying. Harry fell asleep and dreamed of a snake attacking Arthur Weasley. Usually he could control these dreams. Tonight, he couldn't. He was pulled along, all in a rush, and all he could do was be as still and quiet as he can, for fear someone would notice he was a snake attacking Mr. Weasley and uninvited him from the burrow, as is the logic in dreams. He woke all in a panic and told Ron, stumbling over the words, everything rushing together, head aching fit to split open. Then he told Professor McGonagall. Then she told him he was going to go see the headmaster, and the bottom fell out of the world. Oh, he didn't want to go see the headmaster. "You misunderstand me," said Dumbledore, still in the same calm tone. "I mean, can you remember where you were positioned as you watched this attack happen? Were you perhaps standing beside the victim, or else looking down on the scene from above?" This was such a curious question that Harry gaped at Dumbledore. It was almost as though he knew. "I was the snake," he said. "I saw it all from the snake's point of view." All this worry about hiding it from him, and he knew. It was completely typical, completely unfair, and Harry still didn't know if anyone at all was looking for Mr. Weasley. But events were moving, and Dumbledore seemed to be taking care of things. Harry studied his shoes, and finally remembered to occlude. It had been just luck Voldemort hadn't looked in right now. His barriers were wavering walls, but they were something. It was all topsy-turvy in his head. He remembered, suddenly, as if he'd been living in a fog, that Voldemort was not just a voice in his head, that said scholarly things about runic magic. That Voldemort had killed his parents and had just done his best to kill another of Harry's precious adults. Whether Voldemort was an animagus or there was some spell involved, Harry would bet his last galleon this was because of their connection. Their connection, which Harry hadn't stamped out. Their connection, which had just warned Harry in time to save Arthur Weasley's life. Harry was getting a headache above and beyond his usual curse scar headache. This, Harry decided firmly, was a time for drugs. Candy, anyone. I've got lemon flavor, chocolates, and caramels. He popped a chocolate into his own mouth. I will take a lemon-flavored candy, my boy, said Dumbledore. Harry handed the bag of lemon candy to Ron to pass to the headmaster. Do they have a name? Sunny Lemons, Harry said. They're cheerful. Fred and George both accepted caramels with knowing looks. They'd been the ones to make this batch, after all. Ginny took a lemon candy and Ron a chocolate. It was an innocent mistake. As they were using the portkey, Harry happened to glance up, and for a moment he met Professor Dumbledore's blue eyes. Pain blazed inside his skull, and Harry was in Grimmauld Place and looking at Sirius, and everyone was talking to him. You are inconvenient, Harry Potter, hissed Voldemort in his mind. Harry closed his eyes very tightly. Everyone was still talking. His head was still trying to split open. He was still very calm. He held up a hand for calm without opening his eyes. I have magic visions of Voldemort sometimes. It's pretty painful. My head's going to fall off and crawl into a gutter. I missed the other questions. What happened to our dad? Asked Fred. Giant snake. Don't know why or where or how Voldemort got a giant snake. Don't know why I have visions of him. Dumbledore knows, so no panicking. It's just one more thing. Harry, said Sirius, do you need to sit down? I need to lie down, I think. Someplace quiet, I'm sorry. Come on, Sirius said, and picked him up. Harry yelped, tensed, but Sirius completely ignored this as he carried him up the stairs. First rule of having a seer around, Sirius informed him lightly. Make sure the seer takes care of himself. Not a seer. Just an idiot. You should have told me it was happening again. By owl, Harry said sarcastically. Point, but hey, at least you got to come home for Christmas. Home. There was something about that Harry was not quite following, that he should worry about, but his head was really hurting. Voldemort was furious, somewhere, and everything was bleeding together. Harry was tucked in under his bedspread Mrs. Weasley gave him. That was enough, for now. Harry, whispered Voldemort gently, we need to talk about this. We really don't. You might. V killed Mr. Weasley. You went poking your nose someplace. You were not permitted. If you think I'm doing any of this on purpose, I hate you. Leave me alone. Poor little chosen one. So angry because Dumbledore doesn't tell you anything. I'm pretty sure you're the one who's mad at him, not me. Oh, you're furious, Harry. Not quite so furious as I am, but so few people are. Harry tried to gather the necessary emotional detachment to clear his mind and occlude, and it completely failed to come. Mr. Weasley was in the hospital. There wasn't any emotional detachment to be had, not for love nor money. He had felt it, he had been the snake, he had felt his teeth sinking in. He felt tremendously guilty and tremendously confused. Voldemort felt tremendously angry and preoccupied, and then his presence was gone. Harry sagged, relieved. He could lie quietly in the dark for a while. After an indeterminate amount of time, Sirius popped his head in. You want to do something about breakfast, Harry? I can't figure out how to work the stove. Which was a stone-cold lie, but Harry appreciated it. He pulled himself out of bed and downstairs, and the day began. I shouldn't have gone to bed, Harry said, in an undertone to Sirius. Sure you should have, Sirius replied. It's your bed, isn't it? Harry grinned crookedly at him, and let that be answer enough for now. Got you a few things, Sirius said. Christmas presents, but I didn't wrap them because I didn't think you'd be here. They're in your room. It wasn't really the time, but later Harry would be happy about that. Mr. Weasley would be okay, and Harry would be happy about that. They had to talk to Mrs. Weasley for a few minutes, but then Harry was tugging Sirius away into the pantry for privacy. "Harry," asked Sirius, "it's worse than I've been telling anyone. I think Dumbledore knows, but it's worse. The connection, it's not just visions I'm getting from him. He gets stuff from me, I think, so you can't let anyone tell me anything important. I'm working on my occlumency, but I'm pants at it. I'm trying." "Breathe," Sirius said firmly. "And Professor Snape can't do anything about it for stupid spy reasons or something. I don't know." Snape knew about this. Harry tucked his hands into his pockets. "I'm sorry. I know I'm not making much sense." "No," said Sirius slowly, face shadowed. "Don't be sorry. Like Marley's been saying, we're the grown-ups. We're the ones who are supposed to take care of this. And the locket, it's a Slytherin family heirloom. Your brother stole it or something. He died over it, Sirius. I couldn't put that in a letter." All the breath and life seemed to drain right out of Sirius. Harry felt very alone. "It's going to be a good day," Sirius said in a soft, thoughtful voice, "when we figure out what destroys that thing, isn't it?" "Yeah, Sirius," said Harry, trying for bracing. "A really good day." Harry retreated to his room and barely felt the conversation and hubbub around him. He concentrated on his occlumency barriers. That was his job right now. He'd let Voldemort in too far, been too complacent. Voldemort wasn't a murderer in an abstract sense, like Sirius or Snape. He hadn't tried to kill someone ages and ages ago, like Sirius, or maybe killed people, but Harry wasn't even sure who or how many, like Professor Snape. Voldemort was killing people now. It didn't matter if he was civil. Harry had to get his head on straight, and that meant not having Voldemort whispering in his ear. "Harry," whispered Ginny during a quiet moment, "is this because—" Harry nodded jerkily. "I'm going to be more careful, Gin," he said. "Talk to Sirius and Dumbledore, whoever I have to." "It's not a bad thing if it helped rescue Dad," she said. "But the worst thing about him is he's not all bad." Ginny got a very firm hug. If Harry believed in soulmates, maybe he'd believe in someone with the same sorts of scars on their soul. But that was a thought for another time. Chapter 74. Sirius Attempts Parenting. "Course he's worried," growled Moody. "The boy's seeing things from inside you-know-who's snake. Obviously, Potter doesn't realize what that means, but if you-know-who's possessing him." Harry pulled the extendable ear out of his own, his heart hammering very fast and heat rushing up his face. He looked around at the others. They were all staring at him, the strings still trailing from their ears, looking suddenly fearful. It was Ginny who spoke up. "So it looks like our big secret's out," she said, looking around at her brothers. "I've been helping Harry with it. I've got experience, don't I? So you can all stop making jokes about me in Michael Corner." Her brothers did not seem reassured. "We'll talk back out the house," Harry said, digging out his authority voice from the door. "I can explain." "Not sure there's any way you can explain that, partner," said Fred. "It's not Harry's fault, is it?" Ginny said tartly. "He didn't invite." Ginny hesitated as a nurse wandered by. "Back at the house," Harry said firmly. The twins and Ginny and Ron piled into Harry's room, settling awkwardly on his lack of furniture. Harry sat on his bed, and after a moment, Fred and George came back with chairs. "I've been working on blocking him since the beginning of fall term," Harry started. "With occlumency, remember, Ron. I haven't been arguing with the grown-ups when they want to keep me away from things. You heard them. They all know about it. The only thing they don't know is that I know." "Mate, why didn't you tell me?" Ron asked. "I thought we got over this last year. I can't help if you keep secrets." Harry wasn't quite sure. "Because it feels like it's your secret, your own special thing, and you don't want anyone to intrude on it," said Ginny. "That's how it felt." Harry frowned. "Maybe a little, but mostly, All of them were being so clever, not telling me about my life. I wanted to know something about my life that they didn't, for a change. That's nuts, Harry, said George kindly. We keep some sorts of secrets from Mum, but not Voldemort-level secrets. You can't just trust the dough with this. Fred, being the voice of reason, was really not something Harry had been counting on. Harry eyed him. How about I go get my mum, and then you can finish explaining, George said. No, no, absolutely not. She's upset enough as it is. Harry did not like the look the twins were giving him. The twins were not good at listening. Serious, Harry decided. I almost called him my mum, never tell him I did that. That got a laugh from the room, ruining the solemn air. Fred and George went to track down Sirius, and Harry trailed Ron into Ron's room, where a portrait told Harry from Dumbledore to stay where he was. Harry ducked into the loo, and indulged in hating the headmaster a bit. I hate him. Sometimes I really just hate him. Music to my ears, Harry. Why are we hating the headmaster today? Harry closed his eyes and tried to think about nothing. High-handed orders. Stop looking at my memories. If a guest comes around and you've left things out all over the table, it isn't their fault if they glance at them. You're not a guest. I'm not the one keeping you tucked away in a little box until you're needed, little weapon. Wait, did that make Harry the secret weapon Voldemort was looking for? Voldemort chuckled. I knew they were keeping you ignorant. I didn't realize they were lying to you. Delightful. Harry resisted the urge to ask what he meant and grabbed a chocolate from his bag. He'd be calm if it killed him. Occlumency barriers back in place, Harry ducked back out of the loo and back to his bedroom. The sea of expectant faces, Sirius, Fred, George, Ron, Ginny, made him want to go hide in another loo. He didn't. He sat down on his bed. It started at the beginning of term, he said, and I suppose I know how people feel when they star in a telly show now. Explaining took quiet, exhausting hours. Sirius wanted to come stay in Hogsmeade to keep an eye on him. Harry pointed out that it would be a great idea as long as Sirius never told Harry where he was or how to meet him. So, Sirius asked, after everyone had exhausted their questions about occlusion, Voldemort, and why Harry hadn't trusted them, where does Snape fit into all of this? He knows. He knows more than he's told the headmaster, Sirius said darkly. The headmaster told me well. He didn't suspect this. Are you going to tell him? Harry asked. I should. You're sure you're occluding now? Absolutely sure. Sirius, I don't want you to tell him. Tough, Sirius said, but with a small smile. But you've got a bit of time. I'm not using anyone or anything to pass this message, and I'm not running off to Hogwarts myself. I'll keep it under my fur as long as you keep 'em out of your head. Promise me. Harry looked mulish. It helped last night. Did you have the dream on purpose? Then you're allowed to have dreams you can't control. During the day, during your life, keep him out of your head. What if I don't? Sirius stood, pacing. Never done this before, have I, treating you like a kid. Used to hate it when my parents, but then James Ham. Harry eyed this with some worry. If you don't promise to keep him out of your head, Sirius said firmly, you don't get your Christmas presents. Harry blinked. That's it. That's it. Harry attempted to wrap his head around a lack of Christmas presents as a punishment. The Weasleys, still there, watched in silence. If I da promise, do I get a present early? Harry asked cautiously. He felt like he was channeling Dudley, but he wasn't sure who else to copy. Sirius grinned in an abrupt reversal of mood and swung open Harry's wardrobe and tossed him a bright green something. Harry wasn't quite sure what it was, because the fabric covered him entirely, as if he was under a blanket. Harry dug himself out of his new ocean of fabric and found himself holding a padded green something, spangled in silver stars. He stood, shaking it out. It was a green quilted silk dressing gown, covered in about 20 silver stars that doubled as pockets. I found it in one of the old guest rooms, Sirius said, watching him from beneath dark hair. Cleaned it up a bit. I thought not everything you needed to own was red, and you are getting pretty addicted to pockets. This definitely has enough pockets. Harry tried it on, over his clothes. Ron tried bravely. You look very stylish, real Dumbledore fashion sense. General hilarity ensued. Harry grinned to himself and stuck his hands in two of his pockets. If I keep collecting red and green, Harry commented, I'll end up looking like a Christmas elf and Hermione will try to set me free. Worse things could happen, Ron commented. I'm starved, let's go eat. Harry was drifting between sleep and wakefulness after a very long day when Voldemort said, Have you ever heard of the laws of war, Harry? No, I'm not talking to you. The laws of war govern who is an acceptable target. To explain it simply, it separates the world into military targets and civilian targets. Those who take up arms to fight are acceptable targets, while women and children at home are not. Arthur Weasley, for example, was a combatant. Harry was very tired. He tried to pummel his brain into logic. It didn't quite work. That's stupid, he replied. You're just being a bastard. I know you kill women and kids. Not without reason, Harry. Like that muggle looked at me funny, that sort of reason. It depends. You, for instance, well, if your guardians haven't told you, I'm sure they have a good reason. My mum and dad were fighting you. They were in the order. I know that. What does Severus say about this lack of curiosity of yours? I wonder. I've never been accused of a lack of curiosity in my life, and I'm not talking to you. Ah, well, worth a try. Harry considered Voldemort going about his day, plotting out lines of argument to try on him, Harry Potter, and decided this was really stupid. Why are you even trying? You're not Draco, you're not naive. You know I'm not going to magically come round to your side or anything. Talking to you makes me feel more human, Harry. As I told everyone last summer, I spent the past 14 years clinging to life. Watching you reminds me of the little things. I am not a telly show. I'm a person. People are a people. It matters if they're happy or sad or live or die, you complete nutter. You are very lucky, child, that we do not have an audience for these little conversations. Generally, I have to insist on a level of decorum. Like bowing to death and melodramatic rot like that. I find my followers respond well to melodramatic rot, thank you. I'm going to recite Quidditch statistics until you go away now. Amusing though you trying to bore me to death is, I've decided to show you something. Harry fell asleep and dreamed of a corridor where something wonderful was hiding. Chapter 75, Apprenticeship. The next day was mostly very happy. Sirius Wassingingers, he went around the house decorating for Christmas, which Harry found faintly unnatural but also absolutely wonderful. Harry wore his new dressing gown around everywhere. It was a drafty old barn of a house. It was cold, and pointed out that he could only be accused of lacking house spirit if he wore green at Hogwarts. Mrs. Weasley supported this by pointing out that it matched his eyes, and that was the end of that, except for Fred and George, who seemed intent on accidentally mistaking him for Professor Dumbledore every time he turned around. Hermione turning up was wonderful, and Harry repeated the experience of explaining the situation. She seemed very calm about it, and had actually reread every book in the library on occlumency and possession recently. I thought we might be able to use something about them in the so she had some very intelligent questions to ask. Christmas Day dawned with Harry struggling to feel guilty about being happy about having everyone he cared about in one place under his roof. He tried to convince himself it was not his fault Mr. Weasley had been attacked by a giant snake, but this was not very convincing. He felt like he had turned into a giant snake and attacked Mr. Weasley to gather everyone at his house, and no amount of logic could convince him otherwise. The rest of Harry's Christmas present from Sirius was a pair of fluffy slippers that looked like they'd been skinned off some sort of great beast. Don't ask, Harry, but they'll be dreadfully warm. And a shared gift from him and Remus of books entitled Practical Defensive Magic and its use against the dark arts. Harry stuck his odd-fanged wallet from Hagrid on a bookshelf and his weird painting from Darby on the wall, and felt like his room was really developing character. Visiting the hospital managed to quiet Harry's good spirits, especially meeting Neville's parents. Harry, Creature, and Sirius had some nasty arguments as the holidays wound down. Harry, who hated practicing occlumency all the time, was testy, and only the prevented him from wanting to drop Hogwarts altogether and work on destroying the locket with Sirius. Creature, meanwhile, was of the sneaking suspicion they were not taking its destruction seriously, and had some unkind and probably true things to say about Mundungus Fletcher, thieves, and the family silver. Sirius never quite came out, and said he thought Harry dropping out of school to stay home with him was a brilliant plan, but he had dark moods that sent Harry off to his friends for some company that wasn't quite so damaged. Harry pushed open the kitchen door to find Sirius and Snape both seated at the long kitchen table, glaring in opposite directions. The silence between them was heavy with mutual dislike. A letter lay open on the table in front of Sirius. Said Harry, to announce his presence. Snape looked around at him, his face framed between curtains of greasy black hair. Sit down, Potter. You know, said Sirius loudly, leaning back on his rear chair legs and speaking to the ceiling. I think I'd prefer it if you didn't give orders here, Snape. It's my house, you see. An ugly flush suffused Snape's pallid face. Harry sat down in a chair beside Sirius, facing Snape across the table. I was supposed to see you alone, Potter, said Snape, the familiar sneer curling his mouth, but black. I'm his godfather, said Sirius, louder than ever. I am here on Dumbledore's orders, said Snape, whose voice, by contrast, was becoming more and more quietly waspish. But by all means stay, Black. I know you like to feel involved. What's that supposed to mean? Said Sirius, letting his chair fall back onto all four legs with a loud bang. Merely that I am sure you must feel frustrated by the fact that you can do nothing useful. Snape laid a delicate stress on the word. For the order. It was Sirius's turn to flush. Snape's lip curled in triumph as he turned to Harry. The headmaster has sent me to tell you, Potter, that it is his wish for you to study occlumency this term. The headmaster has sent you to tell me that he wants me to study occlumency, Harry repeated blankly. Professor Dumbledore thinks you may have a mental connection to Lord Voldemort, Professor Snape said very neutrally. He thinks I may have a mental connection to Lord Voldemort, Harry repeated. He has his reasons to be suspicious. His reasons to be suspicious. This is going to be difficult enough without you repeating everything I say, Professor Snape snapped. I feel like someone could start a joke this way. 3 people walk into my mind, someone gets hit in the head by a bar. Spare me your juvenile sense of humor, Potter. I think you can spare Harry your idea of how it's appropriate to talk to kids, Snape, said Sirius. Harry jumped. He'd rather forgotten Sirius was in the room. That is precisely none of your business. I am his teacher. Just because you teach at his school doesn't give you license to act like yourself all the time. I am his teacher. I will talk to him as I see fit, Black. Potter, your occlumency lessons will be Mondays at 6. If anyone asks, they are simply an extension of your potions. Professor Snape shot Sirius a poisonous look. Apprenticeship. Sirius was standing up. If you think me Godsonis going anywhere near being your apprentice, you sniveling sack of slime, you have another thing coming. I accept, Harry said quietly. Both of them stared at him. What? Asked Sirius. I had Hermione look up how apprenticeship works a couple months ago. I accept. Professor Snape blinked at him. Sirius sat back down heavily. Harry, Sirius said slowly, you can't know what you're saying. He's a Death Eater. Reformed or not, he's black as they come, and I have my questions about Reformed. Professor Snape, Harry said severely, has saved my life tons of times. That's good enough for me. I think it should be good enough for you. I need a master if I want to get my own potions mastery. I've been wanting it to be him for years. So I think you should apologize for trying to murder him that one time, under the circumstances. Both Sirius and Professor Snape seemed to have forgotten how to move or breathe. Professor Snape recovered first. Yes, he whispered malevolently. Perhaps you should apologize for trying to murder me that one time. I would certainly appreciate it. Sirius gave him a look of intense dislike. I wasn't trying to murder him, he said. I was just trying to give him a lesson in being a nosy little snake. I knew he'd slither out of it somehow. Harry gave Sirius an incredibly unimpressed look and folded his arms. Sorry, Sirius said, in as unconvincing a tone as Harry had ever heard. Your apology is accepted in the spirit it was given, Snape said with a bitter smile, eyes hooded. Great, Harry said, standing up. I feel like this calls for cake to celebrate my new apprenticeship. What flavor will everyone have? My errand is done, Potter, Snape said, standing as well. I shall leave you to your family to celebrate. Snape swept from the room. Sirius watched him go and shook his head. Chocolate raspberry cake will work for me, Harry. At which point, the entire Weasley clan poured into the room, and Harry endured a lively discussion of whether this was a further sign of insanity. He made a chocolate raspberry cake and a carrot cake, and Fred and George magicked up a banner reading, Congratulations on your apprenticeship with Evil Nose. Hope you don't die. Chapter 76, Interlude, Draco's Holidays. Draco glared at the mouse, his wand still leveled at it. The mouse's whiskers twitched at him. Avada Kedavra. The mouse investigated the piece of cheese next it and started nibbling. Draco hissed at it. He had his spare wand. He was in the part of the grounds fully shielded from nosy spells like the Trace. Hecknooth spells. He'd seen them done before. He'd killed tons of mice before. What was the problem? Imperio, he commanded, and that flowed through him easily, like dark honey. The mouse looked up from its cheese and trotted easily over to its water dish, where it proceeded to drown itself merrily. Draco ran his hands through his hair, grabbed a handful each, and tugged gently. It didn't really help. Young Draco, does your father know you are so precocious? Asked a soft, hissing voice. Draco jumped, turned, met the Dark Lord's eyes, and dropped to his knees, eyes firmly on the ground. Draco got back to his feet, slowly, tucking his wand away. May I see that? Draco handed the wand over, keeping his gaze averted. Tell me about your wand. That's not that is. My wand is hawthorn and unicorn hair. That's a spare I picked up. Maple and unicorn, I think. The Dark Lord returned it, and Draco put it hastily away. Are you frightened of me, young Malfoy? Draco jerked his chin up and met the Dark Lord's eerie eyes. Some days I think I'm a bit of a coward, Draco thought to himself, and said aloud, No, sir. The Dark Lord smiled thinly. You may call me my lord. You will be joining my Death Eaters soon, I hope. Your father seems to think you need more time to learn, but you seem quite eager. Thank you, my lord, Draco said, tasting the words on his tongue. I still have a great deal to learn. He still wasn't sure what he was doing wrong. You're not having any fun, Draco, the Dark Lord said. Do you have more of those mice? Yes, he hesitated, my lord. It felt strange. It felt like he was a grown-up. He got another mouse from his box of mice. Catching them had been fun. The Cruciatus depends on delight, the Dark Lord said. You must understand the pain you wish to cause and truly wish it. Let the impulse to cause it fill you and flow from your wand. Your wand is your will, and your will is power. Crucio. The mouse writhed, tiny voice shrill with pain. Draco watched and wasn't sure how to feel. After all, in the end, it was just a mouse. Mouse were funny when you hurt them, when they tried to run away, and you swatted them back into the circle of your paws. He pointed his wand and thought about the mouse entertaining him. The mouse screamed. Draco smiled. Very good. Your father will be proud, I'm sure. That is a complex spell for one so young. Draco's smile broadened, though he wasn't sure his father would appreciate him practicing his curses without permission. You have my permission, Draco. You need no other. Draco swallowed. He had heard the Dark Lord was a legerdemain, but to experience it himself. Thank you, my lord. Try it again. And Draco did. He couldn't quite get the right feeling. The first few times, nervous under the watchful eyes of the Dark Lord, but Crucia flowed back into him, heady as fire whiskey, and it became easier and easier with each successful casting. Very nice, the Dark Lord said. Now kill it, if you please, like snuffing out a candle. Avada Kedavra, Draco murmured, and there was the briefest flash of green. The mouse stilled, finally. Come along. That's enough games for one day. I'm sure your father is curious what you've been up to. Draco followed behind the Dark Lord, mind preoccupied by the heady pleasure of the magical power, riding the crest of the wave. Tell me your impressions of Harry Potter. His best subjects are defense against the dark arts and potions. His best friends are Hermione Granger, a mudblood, and Ronald Weasley, Arthur Weasley's youngest son. Chapter 77. The First Occlumency Lesson. Sirius took Harry aside and gave him a way to get a hold of him if Harry was in trouble, as Harry was about to leave for the night bus. Harry screwed up his courage and hugged the man. Neither of them seemed quite sure what to do with themselves after that, but luckily the flow of leave-taking washed them away, social niceties observed. After the night bus dropped them all at Hogsmeade, Harry was saying goodbye to everyone when Remus said something that startled him. Look after yourselves, said Lupin, shaking hands all round and reaching Harry last. And listen. He lowered his voice while the rest of them exchanged last-minute goodbyes with Tonks. Harry, I know you don't like Snape, but he is a superb occlumency, and we all, Sirius included, want you to learn to protect yourself. So work hard, all right. Yeah, all right, said Harry heavily, looking up into Lupin's prematurely lined face. See you, then. Harry spent the walk to the castle trying to figure out why someone would think he didn't like Professor Snape. Just because he and Ron constantly complained the man was evil, got detention with frightening regularity, and Professor Snape treated Harry like mud whenever they were in public. Harry forgot that other people didn't selectively filter everything Professor Snape through a series of fine-grained filters developed over the course of 5 years of habit. Funny, that. He wondered what he would have thought of Professor Snape if he hadn't put the effort in. Professor Snape, explaining legerdemain and occlumency, was very different from the book explaining it. So, Voldemort can read minds with everyone. If we are going to continue this, you will not use the Dark Lord's name. Why not? I always do. Because Potter, saying something or someone's name, is a way to summon them. Do you wish to draw that particular strain of attention right now? I'm occluding, all right. My mind is clear, my emotions are clear. I got new Quidditch statistics from the Daily Prophet to recite. Quidditch statistics. Very boring. You don't think I could lose his interest by memorizing potions facts, do you? How much of this was review? I mostly focused on defensive theory before. I never thought about what it would look like from the attacker's point of view. It is not necessarily an attack. Harry eyed his professor. You will see. Stand up and take out your wand, Potter. Harry got to his feet, feeling nervous. They faced each other with the desk between them. You may use your wand to attempt to disarm me, or defend yourself in any other way you can think of, said Snape. And what are you going to do? Harry asked, eyeing Snape's wand apprehensively. I am about to attempt to break into your mind, said Snape softly. We are going to see how well you resist. I have been told that you have already shown aptitude at resisting the Imperious Curse. You will find that similar powers are needed for this. Brace yourself now, Legilimens. Resisting active legimancy was very different from building mental walls with Voldemort on the other side. After Professor Snape had flipped through his memories like a scrapbook, and Harry had accidentally cast a stinging hex, Professor Snape drew back, tilting his head. You never told me you were almost sorted into Slytherin. That's because that was private. Then perhaps you should learn occlumency. I thought ignooclumency. Do not take your frustrations out on me, Potter. If you do not wish me to see, stop me. Just like potions, right? Discipline and focus. Eternal nay, constant vigilance. Yes. That got almost a laugh from Harry before he firmed his stance and let the feel of the wind carry him. Let's see how Professor Snape liked the feel of flying the way Harry flew in Quidditch. It turned out that Professor Snape did not like it. It turned out that Professor Snape could add feelings and memories, not just look through embarrassing ones. Harry wasn't sure how Professor Snape had gotten a memory of dipping his hands in acid, but Harry wasn't a fan. And then they were falling down an endless corridor towards a black door, and Harry recognized it. No need to worry about that right now, Harry. Hello, Severus. I rather thought you'd be visiting soon. I think we should all take a moment to share a memory, said Voldemort, softly amused. And then they both fell into a memory, as if putting a foot through a missing stair. Lily, take Harry and go. It's him. Go, run. I'll hold him off. The sounds of someone stumbling from a room, a door bursting open, a cackle of high-pitched laughter. Not Harry, not Harry. Please not Harry. Stand aside, you silly girl. Stand aside now. Not Harry, please no. Take me. Kill me instead. Not Harry, please have mercy, have mercy. A shrill voice laughing, and the woman screaming. A blinding green flash and a burning pain in his forehead, then a high, cold, cruel laugh. And Harry was looking into Snape's dark eyes, and Snape was looking away, hiding his expression behind his hair. Harry twisted his hands together, not sure what was real and what wasn't. His mother's scream echoed in his mind. I think, Harry said thickly, that you teaching me occlumency is a really terrible idea. Let's never do this again. Sadly, Mr. Potter, Snape whispered, we do not always get what we want. Professor Snape was cringing. He didn't think Professor Snape knew how to cringe. Harry felt Voldemort watching them both and hated him. Hated his laugh, hating him taking Harry's mother away, so that the only thing Harry had left was a begging woman's voice and photos. Harry swayed on his feet. Sit down, child, Voldemort told him. I have plans for you that do not involve you cracking your head open on Hogwarts floors. You should sit down, Professor, Harry said, staying where he was. Professor Snape sat and gestured Harry into the opposite chair. Harry sat. They stared at each other. Harry fought to control his breathing and find the calm place in his head that blocked everything out. It took a long time. He's gone, Harry said, once it was true. I will see you Wednesday, Potter, Professor Snape said. We will continue your lessons then. Are you okay? Don't be ridiculous. It was not the first nor will it be the last time the Dark Lord took his frustrations out on me, Professor Snape said briskly. That doesn't really help. Get out, Potter, now. Harry obeyed. Chapter 78, Expression 13. That evening, Harry dragged Fred and George into a frenzied discussion of invisibility charms, potions, candies, and enchanted items. Sure, he had an invisibility cloak, but none of his friends did. A candy that made you briefly invisible, now that would be a good trick. He didn't talk about occlumency. Harry, dear, you might want to find a little privacy, Voldemort said in a tone Harry didn't recognize, just as Harry had finally reached his room. Harry took a moment to contemplate Voldemort calling him after the memory he'd just dug up, lay down on his bed, and muffled his face in his pillow for a good scream. It turned out it muffled the gleeful cackling laughter quite well, as well. So Harry thought muzzily as Neville asked him if he was okay. Voldemort's strong emotions can break through too. Wonder what he's so darn happy about. Harry was half asleep, having wrestled with clearing his mind before bed for a while and giving it up as a miserable failure, and realized that if he couldn't occlude, he might as well be a pain in the neck. So he thought in Voldemort's general direction. What are you so cheerful about? Oh, Harry, I'm absolutely certain you can read about it in the papers tomorrow. I wouldn't want to ruin your look of surprise. I told my friends over Christmas because of the snake. Friendship is a wonderful thing. You have friends. Harry was rather too tired to censor himself. In my own way, I do. I really hate you. Go to sleep, Harry. Pleasant dreams. In the morning, Harry was feeling steady enough to occlude, and he read in the paper about a mass breakout of Death Eaters from Azkaban. That, he thought grimly, explained that. Between that and the murder of a Department of Mysteries employee, Harry found it pretty easy to keep his focus with his occlumency during the day. The problem was his occlumency lessons, which Harry was now certain were absolutely necessary. They were just also absolutely horrible. The second occlumency lesson, on Wednesday, started much the same as the first. Professor Snape attempted legimancy and browsed through Harry's memories. He was curious about Harry's theft of potion ingredients. Harry had been hiding Hermione's guilt in the matter for years. The extent of Harry's dysfunctional relationship with his relative's Aunt Petunia swinging a frying pan at his head, Uncle Vernon's hands around his throat, his memories of talking to Voldemort. "Oh, are we having a lesson again?" Voldemort asked. "I'm a little busy tonight, but I can pitch in." "I am capable of teaching occlumency," Professor Snape replied mentally. "I am a teacher." "I apologize, my lord." "Definitely a lesson." Harry visualized perfectly falling off a broom at high speeds and shoved them both out of his mind. He sat down on the floor, panting. "Very good, Potter," Professor Snape said coolly. "Again." Harry clambered to his feet. "Legimens." Harry was very small, curled up in his cupboard. Harry was seeing Hogwarts for the first time, awed at people like me. Harry was talking to a snake at the zoo. "Very well, Severus, you've made your point. I am perfectly aware of the parallels. Shall I take a turn?" "Master, tell me your will and I will obey. But I am somewhat at a loss of what you wish of me." "You do trust the boy a great deal," Voldemort observed. "Not even a pretense of loyalty to your precious Dumbledore." Harry thought about Quidditch statistics. The Chudley Cannons might have a chance at the Cup this year. Well, not really, but Ron held out hope. "Fool boy," thought Snape. "Quite so," said Voldemort, "because it makes it obvious you are trying to hide something from me. Let's see." Professor Snape saying no matter what side he'd been on in the last war, he trusted Harry, understood his position in the coming one. "Tell me, Severus," Voldemort said, still quietly amused, "what would you do if I ordered you to kill the boy right now?" Die sooner or later, Snape thought with quiet, bitter humor. A soundless chuckle. "Harry," Voldemort added, "you're supposed to be doing something." Harry, who had been distracted from his occlusion by this horrifying turn of conversation, occluded. So basically, everything was terrible. Snape, who hated the lessons just as much as Harry did, kept them going past the point where Harry could successfully occlude to save his life, until Harry felt tired and strange, like all his insides were on the outsides. On Friday evening, Harry once again had an occlumency lesson, which ended predictably with Harry with a splitting headache and Snape in vicious humor. They sat in Snape's office and glared at each other, each unwilling to speak first, knowing that it would just start an argument they'd usually save for a public place. "So, are you really going to let this distract you from your monograph?" Voldemort inquired politely. I may be too tired to occlude, but I don't have to talk to you. You realize I'm the only one having fun. Bloodthirsty maniac. We talked potions on Tuesday as usual. Harry decided this was a good time to bang his head on the desk. Go to bed, Potter, before you damage my desk. On Saturday afternoon, Harry's year got either better or worse, and he wasn't quite sure which. Mr. Potter, before we go any further with this idea of yours, a few clarifying remarks. Let me make one thing clear. You will achieve an outstanding in potions. I do not care if that morning you are battling the Dark Lord or if that afternoon you are in St. Mungo's. You will not embarrass me. This apprenticeship plan was definitely one of Harry's better plans. I'm not there yet, am I? At your current level, you would pass. If you managed to concentrate, you would manage and exceeds expectations. Do I have to occlude during the exam, too? By that point, occlusion should constant enough that you would find it more distracting not to. We are not holding a lesson in occlusion today, Potter. Someone knocked on the door. Snape blinked. Grading, Potter, he snapped, and began dismissing his wards with practiced flicks of his wand. Harry settled hurriedly at the main table with a stack of first-year essays. His first-year essays had been this bad, Harry thought tiredly. He didn't know how he had lived with himself. Professor Umbridge came in with her clipboard. Professor Snape, who had unlocked the door, nodded at her and turned to head towards the potions cupboard. Professor Snape, could you explain to me why Potter is here? He is assisting me with grading. Later, he will be sorting oak leaves. We had a delivery, but it's mixed. Potter, you remember the difference between black and red oak? Yes, Sir Orange Fuzz. On the theory that he'd get angry if he looked at Umbridge, Harry kept his gaze on his grading. No, you couldn't just leave your boil potion alone for an hour, honestly. I accepted Mr. Potter as my apprentice at the beginning of this term, Professor Snape said. I mailed in the confirmation to the ministry at the beginning of this week, in fact. Hem. Yes, I had heard something of the sort. I thought there was some mistake. Professor Snape got a large sack of assorted oak leaves out of the supply cupboard and set it on the main table. I assure you, Professor Umbridge, I am not prone to making mistakes in my paperwork. Harry James Potter is, admittedly, somewhat young for an apprenticeship, but allowances must be made. For talent, she asked, seeming drawn in by his low, hypnotic tone. Not at all. Potter is an idiot with no particular talent for the art. No, what Potter has in bushels is sheer idiotic determination. I have yet to find a way to bottle it, but in the meantime, I consider it a service to the community to channel it into something useful. She shook herself. Be that as it may, Professor Snape, under the circumstances, you must understand that the ministry has some questions about the arrangement. The circumstances. The current political situation. My apprentice is unlikely to have time for politics in the next, Snape appeared to pause to consider, 5 years. Mr. Potter, she said sweetly, surely you're concerned this will cut into your time, saving the world. Harry glanced up at her and decided, what the hell, he might as well have some fun. Well, Professor, I find potions helps me keep calm. I get jumpy sometimes, he said with an innocent smile. And then I don't quite know what I'm saying, not much talking with potions. Thoughts seemed to be clicking together behind her eyes. There may be a hearing, she said to Professor Snape. Apprenticeships are not within ministry jurisdiction, he murmured, expression distant. They are a very old tradition indeed, in fact. We would not want to argue with tradition. Be that as it may, Professor Snape, we would not want anyone to take advantage of the situation. Her gaze flickered sideways towards Harry, and she swept from the room. Now, murmured Snape, once the door was closed again, where did you get that idea? Draco used to call it playing to the narrative, back when he and I still talked. Harry glanced at his professor, who seemed pensive. That, Harry realized with some startlement, was Snape expression 13. I would compliment you right now if I were prone to such things. Chapter 79. What We Do for Fun. Apparently, the boy who lived having an apprenticeship was news. Harry found this out when it turned up in the Daily Prophet, below the fold with a scowling picture of Snape. Everyone, absolutely everyone, had an opinion on it. Ron and Neville wanted to know if he was feeling okay. Professor McGonagall wanted to know if it was the prophet was just making things up again, and got quite a pinched look when Harry admitted sheepishly that he'd accepted Professor Snape's offer. The prophet wanted to know if it was a good idea for an unstable young man to add another responsibility to his overburdened shoulders. The Dom mostly thought it took up far too much of Harry's time, which Harry didn't argue with. Even Hagrid hesitantly asked about it. Harry, who was beginning to get the strong impression no one in the whole school knew how he felt about Professor Snape, mumbled something about potions being interesting. The only person who did not seem to have an opinion on Harry's apprenticeship was Professor Snape, who was too busy having opinion on Harry's knife skills, attention span, occlumency, and general timekeeping. I will not be shown up by Minerva McGonagall, Professor Snape hissed at him, over a cloudy potion that stunk of regret and elderberries. What does Professor McGonagall have to do with it? She has decided that if one of us can take a Hogwarts student as an apprentice, she can too. She's chosen Draco Malfoy. Harry's jaw dropped. So you, purred Snape, will be the best apprentice this school has ever seen. Start again. Can't we go back to worrying about murderous madmen? Harry asked plaintively. Start again. So Harry did. Time sped by. Harry had thought he was busy before, but it was nothing to the amount of time he lacked now. He wasn't that fond of sleeping right now anyway, so he skipped it as much as possible and scraped together a few hours to care about the Gryffindor Quidditch team, which was terrible. Hogsmeade weekend came and went. Harry gave an interview to Rita Skeeter about Voldemort for the Quibbler, and was once again on Professor Umbridge's short list of people to deal with by any means necessary. He occluded with such fierce clarity that he and Professor Snape could get through an hour's worth of practice without Harry breaking down at the end into a horrible mess of jagged mental edges. Cho Chang was very pretty. Harry fell asleep and dreamed of Voldemort and Rookwood. Voldemort was angry enough at first that he didn't notice Harry there. And then he did, as Rookwood was leaving. Ah, I should mind my temper, shouldn't I, Harry? Yes, I'm more and more pleased that I have minded my temper with you. Harry decided he needed to wake up now. He woke up screaming. On Ron's urging, he told Professor Snape about his failure to occlude in his sleep. It did nothing for Snape's temper, which did nothing for Harry's temper, which led, inevitably, to Harry accidentally ending up in his professor's mind. Watching a memory of his professor crying as a child, Harry remembered with frightening clarity the time he and Professor Snape had almost talked about Snape's father. Again, Professor Snape said, as if nothing at all had happened. This time they both fell into Voldemort's mind in their disarray and emotional turmoil. They were in a corridor, blue light beneath the door. Hello, children, Voldemort said. They weren't in a corridor at all. Voldemort was sitting in a library with a small crackling fire in the fireplace. A book of fairy tales was open in his hands. Does someone have an explanation for this? Neither Harry nor Snape seemed in a hurry to volunteer something. Harry, there is a prophecy about you stored in the Department of Mysteries. Severus, please stop trying to cram an entire lifetime into a few months. The child needs time to breathe. Take him somewhere and do something fun. He has little enough time. You do not need to spend it all going blind in a potions laboratory. Good night. Harry was standing in Snape's office. Snape was staring at him. A woman screamed outside, and they were both diverted by investigating what turned out to be Professor Trelawney being sacked. Professor Snape was wearing a hat. Harry knew that, technically, many people sometimes wore hats, but Harry was still having a hard time with Professor Snape wearing a fuzzy winter hat. It looked like something he'd stolen from Derby. The professor was also wearing a winter cloak, but that was slightly more normal. "Professor," Harry asked, staring at him. "We are going out, Potter, here." Professor Snape handed over a dark green winter cloak. Harry stared at this, too. There were a few things he noted about it. First, Professor Snape had handed him something. Second, it was an item of clothing associated with Professor Snape that wasn't black. Third, Harry was very confused. "I'm very confused." "Come along, idiot. We are going collecting in the forest. If you are very unlucky, you will be eaten, but perhaps you should avoid dying of chill first." Harry took the hint and put the cloak on. What followed was very strange. They trudged out of the school, Professor Snape eating up the ground in long, flowing strides past the bounds of the forest. A Lumos bell lit the way. Professor Snape conjured a basket from nothing and handed it to Harry without a word. Then, without a word, Professor Snape pounced a mushroom growing on one of the trees near the edge of the forest, and the mushroom tried to run away. Harry yawned his way through cowardly fungus, pulling fur from a badger by hand. Professor Snape let him wrestle the badger, and harvesting cress from a freezing stream before he said, "Oh, it's the dark of the moon, isn't it?" "Finally, the light dawns," Professor Snape said. "We're waiting until midnight when the flowers open, but there's no reason not to pass the time productively." Harry, who could find patterns when they smacked him in the face, said, "This is what you do for fun. If you're good, I'll let you harvest venom from a rare viper that lairs near here." Harry was not sure he understood Snape's definition of good, but Harry tried to be quick and not fall asleep, and it did end up with him spending the witching hour wrestling with a magic viper that didn't appreciate being woken at midnight. As Harry pressed the snake venom from the small sponge into the waiting crystal vial, Harry considered whether or not his friends would think Harry's definition of fun was a little strange. "Can we do this again?" he asked his teacher. "When the moon is full." Harry, who hadn't been entirely aware that potions mastery included a dose of adventuring, felt abruptly reconciled with his own career choices. Chapter 80: Battle Formations with Friends. Harry was humming to himself as he worked on his paper for History of Magic when Hermione asked, "Harry?" He glanced up at her. Surrounding him at the library table were Ron, Hermione, and Neville. Greg and Luna were sitting at the table nearest them, heads bent over newspapers. "What is it, Hermione?" "You were humming." "Oh, yes. We've been a little worried about you." Harry considered this. "But things have been going pretty well. It's been a couple weeks since I had any problems with my scar. Umbridge is convinced I'm such a nutter that being mean to me has no effect. Ron's doing better at Quidditch. The house elves are leaving little written messages on the desserts. I like Forenza as a divination teacher." "Tell us when you're happy, you idiot," she said. Somehow this ended in a teary hug from Hermione. Harry went along with it, shooting a helpless glance at Ron. Ron shrugged helplessly. A few dates with Cho had not helped Harry understand girls better. "I think it's the occlumency," Harry said, after they had finished with the hugging part. "It makes my emotions a little distant, I guess. It's not painful or anything." "And no problems with you know?" asked Ron. "Not for ages, huh?" "Good, that was weird." Ron, master of understatement. "If you have time, I could use some help preparing for Greg's emancipation hearing," Hermione said. "You've seemed so busy, but there's so much to do. Wizarding emancipation law is much more complicated than magical beasts law, because there's the matter of who takes responsibility for accidental magic. In the old days, it would be an apprentice's master, but ever since the institution of mass education in the United Kingdom, it's been much more complicated." "Hermione," Harry said slowly, "what did it used to mean to be an apprentice?" It varied depending on the master, of course, but it was some variation on a binding magical contract for labor in exchange for teaching, with the master as the responsible legal party. Why? Just wondering. What did it mean for being an adult? Apprentices weren't generally adults. They would be adopted into their master's family for the interim, of course, since they started at around 10 years of age. Very few wizards were trained because masters had to be selective. That's interesting, Harry said, trying desperately to convince himself that he hadn't heard that right. So Harry was adopted by Snape? Ron asked, making quite the face. Oh, no, no, it's much more informal and legal these days. No one ever uses the binding magical contracts anymore for apprenticeship or employment. They were so easily abused. Don't any of you pay attention in history of magic? It was a factor in the third-to-last Goblin Wars. Don't scare us like that, Hermione, Ron scolded. You're going to turn my hair white. As if Harry would object, Hermione said tartly. Might, Harry mumbled. She patted his hand. Professor Snape and Sirius, then. Harry choked. Ron made fish faces. Harry managed. They'd literally kill each other. I don't think I'd trust them to sleep in the same house at the same time, because they'd kill each other. Don't be ridiculous, Harry, said Hermione. They're both grown men and members of the Order. Harry, who couldn't figure out how to convey the level to which grown men could want to kill each other, changed the subject to the most destructive things everyone had ever heard of, still thinking of the locket of evil. Greg's suggestion of fiendfire was not helpful. There's always basilisk venom, Hermione said absently, flipping through her ancient runes textbook. Basilisk venom. It's not used in potions because it's too destructive. That's why you didn't think of it. Basilisk venom. Harry got up, books and S forgotten, and stopped only by a heavy hand on his wrist. He looked up into Greg's unreadable eyes. Where are you going, Harry? Asked Luna dreamily. I can get basilisk venom, Harry said. I just have to grab my other bag. You're not going down there again without me, said Ron, standing. There could be another one. Somehow, Harry was completely unable to stop his study group, turning into a group expedition to the Chamber of Secrets. I would very much like to see it, Luna said, and after that Greg wouldn't budge on escorting her. Neville's, it's about time I started coming with you for these ideas, was not helping Harry think it was a good idea. But he grabbed his potions collection bag and his heavy dragonhide gloves. You learn some things wrestling a badger. Formations, said Greg as they regrouped after visiting their dormitories to drop off essays and pick up whatever they thought might be useful. Harry, Hermione, and Ron in front. Me and Neville flank. Luna at the rear for support. We're not going in tow battle, Harry muttered. That ever worked before? Greg asked. Harry did not have to admit aloud that no, it never had worked before. So he didn't. Hello, Myrtle. Hello, Harry. What are you making today? Actually, I'm here for the chamber. You never visit anymore. Look, I was here last week, working in calming draft, wasn't I? Oh, was that last week? I just don't have the hang of time anymore. Myrtle stopped revolving in a dizzying, worrying up and down spiral and settled into floating cross-legged in midair. Ron whispered to Harry as an aside, You come here a lot. I brew stuff for Fred and George's line here. Can't do that around Professor Snape, Harry murmured back. Ha, said Ron. When do you sleep? Harry shrugged. He wasn't sure either. He hissed the chamber entrance open and led the way inside. Why was it always spiders? Harry had time to wonder before they were all too busy casting hexes at the swarm to worry about it. At least these were medium-sized, not giant, spiders, which gave him an idea. Give me a minute, he yelled to Ron and Hermione, over Ron's frantic mutter of die, spiders, die. He stowed his wand and rummaged frantically in a lower pocket, coming out with a slim green bottle. He uncorked it and flung the potion in a glittering green line of liquid at the crowd of spiders, which touched it and shrank down to the size of golf balls instead of the size of puppies. As more spiders crossed the line of green potion spattering the floor, they too shrank. And then Ron stepped on them in a strange maniacal dance, still chanting, "Die, spiders, die." Everyone else stopped hexing to watch this. "Ron," Hermione said gently, "you can stop now. They're not aggressive at that age." "Oh, right." Ron stomped one more spider, and they waited warily. No more arrived. "You should share more potions with the class," said Luna dreamily. "I would like to have more options if I lose my wand." "We can talk about it at the next meeting," Harry said, looking around the chamber warily. It didn't seem to have any other surprises, other than being half-flooded, full of spiders, and quite dark. Hermione lit the way with lumos, and Harry approached the basilisk skeleton carefully. He grabbed Neville's hand, right, as Neville was about to touch the tip of one fang. "No, I almost died on one of these. I don't want to have to explain that to your gran." Carefully, from the base. "How many do you reckon we should take?" Ron asked. "I don't want to come back here." "All of them," Harry said firmly. "I'm beginning to like being overprepared." They stripped the snake of fangs, putting they away neatly in Harry's ingredients collection satchel. "Any of you want one?" Harry asked. "I only really need 'em." "I think we should each have one," said Luna, "as a memento of our voyage together." "Right," Harry agreed. "I'll split them up and wrap them so we won't accidentally kill ourselves. Talk about embarrassing." "I don't think you'd have time to be embarrassed, what with being dead," Ron said. "Did you see the way I fought those spiders? Wham! Pow!" Harry clapped Ron on the shoulder, glad someone was having fun. "Curfew," Greg said. And suddenly, what had been an orderly expedition dissolved into a scrambled rush through dim corridors, because Umbridge was scarier than a large pack of spiders the size of small dogs. Chapter 81, Career Advice. "Snuffles?" Harry asked his magic mirror uncertainly. He'd never really been sure how secure the mirrors were, so he'd settled for resolving to only use it in an emergency. Which this wasn't, quite. But he'd been mulling ways to mail the fangs to Sirius for days, and the only thing he'd gotten as advice from friends was a lecture from Hermione on the Restricted Substances Act, and that she expected him to not get expelled over his obsession with destroying a Hogwarts heirloom. Harry did not respond that it was the only thing he and Sirius and Creature found to get along over, because Hermione was still of the impression that Creature was an old dear, somewhere deep down. Deep, deep down, Harry thought. "Harry, everything all right?" came Sirius's deep voice. Something inside Harry relaxed. "I found something that I think might work on the thing," Harry said, keeping his voice down. He was hiding in his room, but you never knew, really. Malfoy might be lurking under the bed. "Really? Great. Tell me and I'll pick it up." "It's a restricted substance, but I may have found one. Here, I'm just not sure how to get it to you, what with Umbridge." How big is it?" "About the size of a wallet." Sirius changed the subject, inquiring about Harry's classes and friends, and Harry let him. They chatted for a few minutes. "We'd better not talk too long. You better send it with Snape," Sirius said reluctantly. "Potions masters have standard permits for most restricted substances, and he can leave the school without a problem. Wrap it up, don't tell him what it is, and we'll see if it gets to me. A sort of test." Harry tried to visualize himself asking Professor Snape to deliver a present for Sirius. "Come on, Harry, don't be a chicken." "I'm not." "Bark, bark, bark," Sirius said helpfully. "Fine, arg." Sirius chuckled. "Lily always fell for that one too," he said, and then the mirror dimmed into inactivity. Harry was left breathless for a moment. Was he more like his mum than his dad? He'd always sort of wished he was more bold, like he'd heard his dad was, but if he reminded Sirius of his mum, that was almost as good somehow. So in the end, that was what Harry did. Professor Snape gave Harry a look, but he didn't argue with the request, accepting the package with a curt, "Do not make a habit of this, Potter." Greg could not make a Patronus. Not a silver shimmer, not a glitter of mist. Nothing. Harry talked to him about it, or tried, but all he'd gotten was a shrug. "What if you thought about Luna?" Harry asked, more grumpy than hopeful at this point. Greg frowned at the middle distance. "Reckon I'm no good at it," he said. "Not good at most spells." "You don't care how well you do in classes," Harry pointed out. "You do fine in dueling." "That's different. I like hurting people." Harry wished desperately for patience, and for Draco to take his minion back already. Except, no, because Luna would be sad. And Harry was growing rather attached to her whimsical attitude, which rather matched his own at times. "Right. Well, it's just supposed to be happy. It's not necessarily supposed to be nice. How about a time you were really happy hurting someone?" Greg's expression softened from grim sullenness into thought. "Expecto patronum," he barked, and for a moment a fluffy silver tail flickered in the air before dissipating. Draco Malfoy, the cat patronus. Harry moved on to his next victim, absolutely and firmly resolving to never ask Greg what his happy memory was. "I was thinking," he was saying to Hermione, "I like the way we did things in the chamber the other day. We should get the working on small teams, like aura partners or trios." And then Darby showed up to warn them, and the scattered. Harry got himself tripped by Draco Malfoy, who took the opportunity to smirk at him. The meeting with Fudge and Umbridge was a delightful example of how to lie to government officials. Harry would have appreciated it more if he was less tense about the results. So many of his friends would do terribly if expelled, Hermione, Greg. It couldn't be worse timing, when everyone had just started to get good, but before they were really smooth and practiced. Dumbledore, Harry thought with awe, was still his role model. Sneaky as a Slytherin, brazen as a Gryffindor, clever as a Ravenclaw. And he noticed, during his admiring stare at the professor, Professor Dumbledore believed in having pockets. "Professor Dumbledore," Harry blurted out, "would you like a bag of lemon candy?" "I would be delighted, Harry," Dumbledore said, still watching Fudge calmly, having just threatened to break out of Azkaban. "Put it on the desk there. I'm afraid Minister Fudge may force me to draw my wand in a moment." Harry put the bag of candy on the table and vowed silently to make sure Professor Dumbledore never, ever ran out of sweets. Not ever. The color of Fudge's face. And before Dumbledore left in a flash of fire, he snagged the bag of lemon candy from the broken ruins of his desk. Harry felt rather warm about that. "Oh, I expect she really fancied herself sitting up there in the head's office," said Hermione viciously, as they walked up the stone steps into the entrance hall. "Lording it over all the other teachers, the stupid puffed-up, power-crazy old." "Now, do you really want to finish that sentence, Granger?" Draco Malfoy had slid out from behind the door, closely followed by Crabbe. His pale, pointed face was alight with malice. "I don't know, Malfoy, do I?" she asked, staring him down. "The inquisitorial squad, which includes myself and Vince here, has been detailed to take house points from those displaying a shocking lack of loyalty to the ministry." He looked Hermione up and down. "I'll let you off with a warning, Granger, if you grovel." "I wouldn't want to get you in trouble," Hermione said with vicious sweetness. "Go on." Harry was really beginning to remember why he'd hated Draco in the first place. Fred and George's plans for mayhem did not cheer Harry up much, because Harry knew some of the things they'd been working on together, and it was too easy to imagine what sort of mayhem those could cause, if set loose properly. Then she tried to drug him. Moody and Professor Snape would kill him if he let himself be drugged by an enemy. Voldemort would probably track him down to torture him if he was that careless around Umbridge. Not to mention anything relaxing inhibitions would do something terrible to his occlumency. Harry suspected that the only reason Voldemort hadn't been absently suggesting ways to torture her all term was because Harry had successfully managed to block his casual interest, which was probably good. Harry was not sure exactly how well he would have dealt with that particular devil on his shoulder. Well, two could play at that game. "Would you like a chocolate, Professor?" Harry asked. "They go very nicely with tea." "No, Potter, I do not want a chocolate. I want you to drink your tea." Harry blinked innocently at her, doing his best lunar impression. "My newest ones are raspberry-flavored." "Drink your tea, Potter," she said gently. "You don't have to worry about chocolates right now. I think you've been very confused, and the tea will help." "Oh, good," Harry murmured, and pretended to sip his tea. "Now, I want you to tell me where Albus Dumbledore is." "Probably not Hogwarts." "Probably. He could be hiding in a room full of chamber pots," Harry said mildly. Her fingers clenched on her teacup. Harry watched with interest and pretended to have another sip of tea. "Where is Sirius Black?" she snapped out suddenly. "The last time I read the papers, they said he might be hiding in London," Harry mused, "but they haven't been very reliable. Now, what could he add to this little performance? I'm very curious where exactly he is right now." Sirius could be upstairs feeding Buckbeak, or downstairs making lunch, or destroying that locket with Creature. It would be very interesting to know where Sirius was. And then they were neatly interrupted by Fred and George, and never had Harry been more happy with a diversion in his life. Harry thought the release of bouncy green hair care potions on the general populace of the school was a bit much, but he rather liked the personalities the twins' potions developed. Instead of one big ball of slime, they split into a dozen tiny green bouncing balls of goo and went for anyone who came near them. Filch had never looked so good, Harry thought happily, casting Finity in one that came for his head and stepping back sharply to watch the fireworks. That night, Hermione congratulated Fred and George and said, "But, oh, you're going to be expelled, I'm sure of it." Fred patted her shoulder. "Don't worry about us, Hermione." "No, it's just," she squared her shoulders. "I would like to buy a selection of fake wands, please, as many different lengths and colors as you have. I expect by this time next week you won't be here to accept orders." George laughed, and shortly Hermione was the proud owner of 20 or so fake wands. "What do you want with all those?" Ron asked, eyeing them with some confusion. "Never you mind, Ronald Weasley." "Bite my head off, why don't you?" he muttered, and went back to the fireworks celebration. Harry didn't dream that night. In a different reality, when Draco interrupted Harry's occlumency lesson, Harry looked into a bowl full of memories and met a different side of his father. In this reality, Harry had a full and clear understanding about Professor Snape's reaction to that breach of privacy and went the safer route of getting ahead on his grading. In many ways, Harry was probably happier for it. Having Umbridge sitting in on his career advice session was something. Harry plastered a placid smile on his face. "Well, Potter, I think you have a clearer idea than most I talk to about your career after Hogwarts." "I want to be a potions master," Harry responded, "and make candy." "You will need very good potions grades for that, of course, and I understand that herbology, care of magical creatures, and defense against the dark arts are all considered very useful in the personal collection of ingredients." Dolor's Umbridge then went on to have a strong opinion about Harry's defense marks, but Harry didn't mind that so much. "Have you considered what you would do once you achieved your mastery?" McGonagall asked, getting the meeting back on track. "Many places employ potions masters, including Hogwarts, St. Mungo's, the Ministry." "The Ministry," Harry interrupted. "Ron wants to be an Auror, and Hermione wants to be an undersecretary in charge of sorting things out, so I think it would be nice to work there with them." Dolor's Umbridge did not like that at all. Harry had actually just said it to see what color her face would turn. He'd rather thought he should go into business with Fred and George. But the longer he thought about it, the more he liked the idea. Him, Ron, and Hermione, fighting darkness and running the country together, with him making all the polyjuice and healing potions they could ever want. Turned out career, advice really was helpful. Chapter 82, Owls. Fred and George left school in a blaze of drama, and light that Harry admired more than fire burned. Harry's main problem in the highly amusing weeks of troublemaking that followed was that he was barely sleeping, and Professor Snape gave him a firm and scathing lecture on potions experts who abused their own stock, complete with examples, and ended up with cross-contamination from taking too many different potions at once. Harry, who had accidentally combined too much calming draught and too much sleeping draught and slept from Friday morning through Monday, took the lecture without too much comment. He had, after all, deserved it. Professor Snape seemed content to end their occlumency lessons aside from the occasional check-in, and was much calmer during potions lessons now that Voldemort wasn't putting in his 2 cents at every opportunity. He had, however, remembered that Harry had a monograph to write as well as owls to complete, and Harry was thoroughly convinced that he never, ever wanted to see another potion in his life. His complete confusion was completed by Ron, Hermione, and Neville asking him toadman straight how to make an owl-level potion for them. Me, he asked them, staring at them blankly. You're the best in our class at potions, Harry, Hermione said briskly. You passed me and Malfoy ages ago. I want to dowel. I'm the best in our class at potions. You didn't know that? Asked Ron. Well, no. I thought I was still more like. You've been taking extra potions lessons 4 or 5 nights a week all year, Harry, Neville said. What were they for if not for to make you better? Harry fought the urge to say that more than half of them were just to stop him going crazy, and the other half was mostly to stop Professor Snape from going crazy with the demands on his time. It was all grading and ingredient preparation and memorizing lists and pepper-up and dreamless sleep, and the occasional foray into polyjuice and wolfsbane theory, but it wasn't. He wasn't. I'm the best in our class at potions, he repeated. Yes, Harry, Hermione said patiently, and I want to see how you make the... Harry made 3 different potions for them, laying his ingredients out in order in the girls' restroom, starting his cauldrons, and adding his ingredients, moving between them with absent calm. He'd figured out the trick to occluding with potions, and it seemed like a good moment to practice. Mate, Ron said slowly, when Harry's 3 potions were simmering, and Harry had paused to lean on the bathroom sink and wait. Why aren't you like this in class? Harry shrugged. I've got you and Hermione to talk to in class, don't I? And I have to keep an eye out for Crabbe and Malfoy mucking with our potions. It's hard to concentrate. Much easier here, or in the evenings. I always get so nervous during potions lessons, Neville observed quietly. The examination should be a lot better, Harry told him. No Snape, no audience, just you and the cauldron. And the examiner, Neville pointed out. Pretend they're not there. Hermione, does that answer your question? You didn't follow the recipe at all, she said accusingly. Sure I did. But you crushed your beans instead of cutting them. I crushed them a little before cutting them, that's all. Gets the juice flowing. It's just a variation, I won't lose points for it. Harry found he rather liked being the one with the most to say about one subject. It filled a hole that Quidditch had left. Maybe now he could say he wasn't really good at anything except Quidditch and potions. Harry survived his owls. Hagrid survived Umbridge's attempt to sack him. Harry fell asleep during his history of magic examination the next day and dreamed. Chapter 83, The Dream. Hello, Harry. I was expecting you last night, but I'm glad you're finally here. Have you not been sleeping well? Voldemort had been looking in a mirror, all white face and red eyes, and he turned to face someone, Wormtail. Fetch Severus for me, Wormtail. Tell him it's time for him to hear his part in tonight's events. Harry stayed silent, because if he was here, he might as well eavesdrop, Voldemort had eavesdropped on him often enough. What was Voldemort planning? Since when had Professor Snape left Hogwarts? Harry had been busy with owls, but he was sure he'd seen him at lunch yesterday. Snape knelt in the circle of light in the middle of the dark room. Voldemort paced around the room, circling slowly, watching Snape. You know, I have been looking for Sirius Black. Yes, Master. I am still unable to break the Fidelius charm. I do not expect you to. Have you wondered why I wish Sirius Black found? To use him against the Potter boy, I assumed. No, Severus, Voldemort said with cool amusement. I have another reason for seeking Black. After all, if I wish to strike at Potter through his loved ones, there is one much closer to hand. I don't understand, Master. It seems to have passed both you and Dumbledore by. Amazing. Usually I find myself always one step behind the man, and here I am, one step ahead. The boy loves you very dearly, fiercely, with his whole heart. Voldemort was at an angle that allowed him to watch the expression freeze on Professor Snape's face. Harry felt Voldemort's quiet delight. Voldemort began circling again, footsteps soft. I'm not sure this would have worked at the beginning of this year. You were doing such a good job keeping your distance. But I have always found that shared adversity brings people together. I had wondered at your goals, Master. You will help Lord Voldemort send a message to Potter, won't you, my Severus? Voldemort had circled around behind Professor Snape now, and Harry felt the wand cool in his hand, as they leveled it at his professor's back. Yes, Master, it would be my honor, Snape whispered. Harry wanted to protest, to shout, but nothing he said seemed to have an effect. He seemed only a ghost, as he'd been in the snake at Christmas. He needed to wake up. He needed to stop this. Good, Crucio. Snape collapsed in that circle of light, limbs jerking blackly, like a spider caught in its own web. Harry, Voldemort thought quite clearly, I need you to run a small errand for me. There is a prophecy in the Department of Mysteries, a small glowing orb with your name on it. You will be able to touch it. The sooner you get it for me, the sooner we can cease this particular game. Don't worry, I'm quite skilled with the Cruciatus, unlike my dear Bella. If you move quickly, we should be able to avoid any permanent damage. You must agree that would be inconvenient. Once you have it, I will arrange to pick it up. Harry woke up in the great hall examination room, yelling, his scar on fire. Chapter 84. The Department of Mysteries. After the initial shock wore off and Harry got out of his blasted history of magic exam, Harry felt very clear-headed. He went to find Professor McGonagall, who was missing. He checked Professor Snape's office, which was empty, the fire dark. He went to find Ron and Hermione. He kept feeling very clear-headed until he was trying to explain why storming the Department of Mysteries was the correct solution to the problem, and they wouldn't listen. They didn't understand. I'm going, he finally settled on flatly. I don't care if it's mad. If I don't do something, he'll end up being killed. I think I've learned something about how Voldemort thinks this past year. This way, at least there's a chance. A fight, maybe. But what have we been practicing for, if not a fight? Their arguments were buzzing in his ear. He was yelling at Hermione. Hermione was accusing him of having a saving people thing. Luna and Ginny were interrupting, and the flicker of Draco's tail in the doorway. Harry didn't have time for Draco right now. Harry ignored him. But there's Sirius, isn't there? Hermione asked. We can contact him somehow. He can tell the order. Harry tried the mirror and got no response at all. So he tried calling Sirius in the fire in Professor Umbridge's office and got Creature. Creature, who told him that Sirius was out and they were busy anyway, too busy for horrible boys. Tell him to call me, Harry said shortly, and ended the flu call. He should make sure he was prepared. He should have made a potion for the after effects of the Cruciatus. He should have thought of it. Umbridge, as was her wont, interrupted, complete with Goon Squad. Greg, who was on the Goon Squad, played his part to a T. Hermione burst into tears. Oh, Professor, I just didn't know what to do. Professor Dumbledore said that we had to do as he said, or we'd have to leave school. Well, you shall do as Sisse, or you shall do worse than leave school, Professor Umbridge said firmly. Hermione fell into her arms, sobbing, or perhaps tackled her. Greg turned his wand on Crab, Draco turned into a cat, and Harry felt like he should be doing something, so he stunned one of the accomplices just for a change. Hermione methodically applied memory charms, except on Draco, who she missed as he bolted down the stairs. "What did you do to Umbridge?" Harry asked, rather intimidated and thoroughly in love. "I stole your horrible contact, poison you kept around just in case you couldn't stand her anymore, because I thought that was too much of a temptation for you." "I'm not entirely sure what all the effects will be," Harry said faintly. "We don't have time to stick around to find out," she said firmly. "And she was going to torture you, Harry, again." "Luna's waiting in the forest," said Greg. "She had an idea." "A good idea?" asked Hermione. "Why's he being so quiet?" asked Ron. "I think he's working on his occlusion," said Hermione. "I imagine it's difficult right now." "I don't have time for this," Harry said, and went to see what Luna's bright idea was. It had better involve transport or something practical. It was this Strauss. Harry's friends were really great. Why they were coming, Harry wasn't really sure, but when he said that, Greg was the first to respond. "He's my head of house, not yours." "I'm his," Harry cut himself off. "Fine." Fine. Greg seemed to have Ginny, Luna, and Neville organized, for whatever value that imparted. Harry was just going to find the thing, steal it, break it into 1,000 pieces, rescue Professor Snape, and kick Voldemort out of the British Isles on his ass. Harry could admit that he needed to work on the fine details of his plan. But riding the Stralback was good thinking time, if he could unlock his emotions enough to think. Oh, there was the panic, and rage, and hatred, and... Harry thought about what the Thistral ride was like, instead, right up until his mirror chimed. "Harry, sorry, got a little caught up in our little project. It's pretty exciting, actually. I'm breaking into the Department of Mysteries to fight Voldemort. I'm breaking into the Department of Mysteries to fight Voldemort, and I promised someone a long time ago I'd tell an adult before I did something this stupid. So, you're my adult." "Why the hell would you do something like that, Harry? Stay where you are. I'm coming to you." "He has something I need, so I'm going. Come or don't, I'll be fine." Or not. Harry didn't really care at this point. He ended the call and stuffed the mirror deep into his deepest pocket. His visitor badge for the ministry said, "Harry Potter, Rescue Mission." Harry really could appreciate the wizarding world sometimes. The way to the Department of Mysteries was clear. Of course it was clear. Voldemort was competent, wasn't he? Harry hated that about him. Eventually they reached row 97, and there was the glowing glass sphere just as ordered. Harry stared at it. He really should just smash it. It was about him, was it? Voldemort had said that ages ago, back when Voldemort had been playing at being not nice precisely, but not his full, brutal self, playing a different game. Harry lifted the glass bowl down from its shelf and stared at it. Nothing whatsoever happened. The others moved in closer around Harry, gazing at the orb as he brushed it free of the clogging dust. And then, from right behind them, a drawling voice spoke. "Very good, Potter. Now turn around nice and slowly and give that to me." Black shapes were emerging out of thin air all around them, blocking their way left and right. Eyes glinted through slits in hoods. A dozen lit wand tips were pointing directly at their hearts. Ginny gave a gasp of horror. "To me, Potter," repeated the drawling voice of Lucius Malfoy as he held out his hand, palm up. Harry's insides plummeted sickeningly. They were trapped and outnumbered 2-1. "To me," said Malfoy yet again. "Where is he?" Harry asked, unwilling even now to name the person he was concerned about. Back and forth they went, mocking, the woman saying it was all just a dream, had it been, had it really. Surely it was not possible that something that awful had just been a dream. Was Snape really on Voldemort's side? Had it all been a trick? Harry found it very easy to find the anger and resolve to raise his wand. He distracted Bellatrix briefly, taunted her briefly, and then bought time frantically as he asked questions about the prophecy. There was only one small difference between another universe and this one, and that was this. Harry did not use Voldemort's name in vain, and so did not anger Bellatrix Lestrange into firing a stunner at him. And then they were smashing shelves of prophecies and running, splitting apart, and the clear rush of adrenaline made Harry sure and calm as anything, aside from the terror. Neville and Hermione were with him, and they were a good three-man team. And then Hermione was injured, Neville bleeding. "Take this and these," Harry said. "The potion's healing, the candy's half an hour of invisibility. Go raise the alarm. Don't use the candy unless you have to. It has some weird side effects a day after use." "I'm not leaving you," Neville said, nose running with blood. But he took a swig of the healing potion and helped Harry give a swallow to Hermione, kicked his old wand out of the way, and they were off on another leg of the let's run around with people trying to kill a circus. Then they found the rest of them, his brave idiots. Harry was frustrated to find that he should have packed a bone-healing potion for Ginny and something for the mind for Ron. But Hermione was stirring and Neville had stopped bleeding and no one was dead, so Harry counted it good. Harry's healing potion was used up on Ginny with a quick whispered, "It won't repair the bone, but it'll help with the pain. But it's still broken, okay?" Ginny nodded, eyes grave, and Harry called it good. At least Greg was a good carrier. Then it all went wrong, somehow, friends stunned, Neville under the Cruciatus. Where was Greg? Harry had seen Ginny fall, but he'd lost Greg a few minutes ago. Then it all seemed like it was going right, with Sirius and the Order arriving, and then wrong again. Harry was busy dealing with Lucius Malfoy, but he saw Bellatrix Lestrange take a stunner in the back from, was that a Death Eater? No, that was Greg in a mask. Good for you, Greg. And then Harry was too busy trying to stay alive to worry about Greg anymore. Dumbledore was there. It would all be all right. Dumbledore was there. No one was left fighting. Harry couldn't relax. There was still Professor Snape to worry about, who was not here, and Harry had smashed the prophecy by accident in his rush, to keep from being murdered with all his friends with it in hand. Sirius was shaking him. "If you don't get us all killed tonight, I'm going to string you up by your heels, Harry. What were you thinking?" "He just finally figured out the right lie to tell me to get me to come here. He's been trying all year. I don't have time for this." "Macca time," Sirius snarled. Harry stared at him. "I have to occlude right now." Bellatrix Lestrange was back on her feet, and Greg was falling, bleeding all over the floor, and she was running. It seemed unlikely that Greg would survive being cut almost in half. "A Blood replenishment potion," Harry said, because his pockets took too long, and then he tossed it at Lupin and was running after Bellatrix, because that was his friend and he Wasengriand, he needed answers. "Nothing there," he shouted. "Nothing to summon. It smashed and nobody heard what it said. Tell your boss that." "No," she screamed. "It isn't true, you're lying. Master, I tried, do not punish me." "Don't waste your breath," yelled Harry, his eyes screwed up against the pain in his scar, now more terrible than ever. "He can't hear you from here." "Can't I, Potter?" said a high, cold voice. Harry opened his eyes. "Where is he?" "It is no concern of yours now, Potter." Voldemort was diverted by Bellatrix begging. So strange to hear how Voldemort's Death Eaters talked about him. "I have one question to ask you before I end this," Voldemort continued, in that same calm, cool tone, as if Harry was an item on his to-do list, and not a very interesting one at that. "Did you ever finish that monograph?" Harry's jaw dropped open. "A pity. I suppose I'll have to dig up the unfinished draft." At which point Voldemort was interrupted by an attacking golden statue, as people so often are.